Okay. Right. Good evening, everybody. We have 72 participants, probably more because some of you are doubles. It's difficult for me to keep an eye on all 72 screens. Normally, my shiurim talks and what have you are interactive, but I think it's going to be unwieldy to be interactive with so many people joining, which is great that so many people are joining. So what I'm going to suggest is that if you try and remember or even jot down your questions as we go along, and at the end we'll try and leave some time for questions and answers if I've got the answers, because otherwise I think it will be a bit too unwieldy. I have put on the chat, for those of you who know how to use it, I have put a link to an introductory video of Techelet. So I would like you at some point after this to have a look at that. And just before we start, there are a couple of things I want to just say. First of all, thanks to Avril for making that very nice flyer that she sent out to everybody. That was very kind of her and very good work. Thank you very much, Avril, for that. Techelet, many of you, probably nearly all of you, will not have heard of Techelet, which is the organization under which this lecture is being done. Techelet is an organization which I have recently started together with two of my colleagues here in Poleg, Rabbi Do Pechter and Rabbi Eli Tilson. It's an organization which has got as a strapline, inspiring Judaism. We are trying to inspire Judaism and be inspired by Judaism and to inspire others in their Judaism. So this is the first lecture that we are having under the Techelet banner, if you like, and hopefully as we go along there'll be lots more. Our website is coming along nicely. It's not ready yet, but as soon as it is, it will be launched with a fanfare. In the meantime, the link that I've sent you on the chat will give you a little introductory video from myself, Ravi Do and Eli, to tell you what we're all about. So that's just a little bit about Techelet. The other thing I want to say before we start is that we are very privileged to have amongst the 75 participants here, Danny Limor. Those of you who don't know Danny, everybody from our area certainly knows Danny. Danny Limor will be familiar to many of you, even if you've never met him, because those of you that have seen the Red Sea diving resort film on the Netflix, Danny Limor is the real life Avi. He was the guy that led the expedition and ran the whole thing and brought out the Ethiopians back to Israel. So Danny Limor is with us, and he is not been messing around since then in the 1990s when he did that, when he did those wonderful things in the 80s. He's not been messing around. He has been around the world globe-trotting, doing all sorts of things, most of which he can't tell us about. But some of the things he's going to tell us about, when I've finished, he's going to give us a little introduction to the work that he's been doing around the world, looking for and helping, assisting and getting together with what he calls Judaizing communities. Communities around the world, in Africa, in South America, all over the world, who are attracted to Judaism, either because they feel that they have their roots in the 10 lost tribes or for other reasons. And in a couple of weeks' time, Danny is going to do a lecture for us under the Techelet banner to tell us in detail about this work. I am currently in the middle of translating his report to the Ministry of the Diaspora, and it's fascinating. It's taken me a lot longer than I thought it was going to take me because it's very complicated, but it's very, very worthwhile. The stuff that he's been doing is amazing, and you'll be amazed at the kind of things that are going on around the world in terms of new Jewish communities. And so that's something which he's going to give us a little introduction to at the end of this talk. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we will have a full talk from Danny on that. Okay, so our topic tonight is the 10 lost tribes. We need to set a little bit of historical context to know about which the 10 tribes we're talking about in the first place. I'm going to share my screen with you now, and hopefully you'll be able to see a map very shortly. Can you see a map? Can somebody give me some thumbs up if you can see a map? Excellent. Okay, that map that you can see there is the map of Israel from 930 onwards. 930 onwards, BCE we're talking about, 930 BCE was the time after the reign of King Solomon, Shlomo Melech. Shortly after that, the kingdom split into two kingdoms, the southern kingdom of Yehudah, kingdom of Judah over here in sort of yellow, and the northern kingdom of Israel in blue over there. The kingdom of Yehudah was the tribe of Yehudah and the tribe of Binyamin. The tribe of Levi, of course, did not have its own territory. It had various cities around the country, but it didn't have a tribal area. So that leaves us with 10 tribes. Binyamin and Yehudah were in the kingdom of Judah, and Levi's knocking around all over the place. And the other 10 tribes were in the north, the kingdom of Israel. The leader of the kingdom of Israel was the tribe of Ephraim, who was the son of Joseph. As you'll remember, Joseph, who was Jacob's favorite son, was given the privilege of the firstborn to have a double portion. His children, Manasseh and Ephraim, to give them their chronological order, were made into full tribes. So there are in fact 13 tribes, not 12 tribes. 3 of them we've accounted for down here, Binyamin and Yehudah and parts of Levi. The other 10 tribes are in the northern kingdom of Israel. It's a bit confusing because we are called Jews. And the reason we're called Jews is because we are from the tribe of Judah, because our remnants are from the tribe of Judah and Binyamin. Binyamin was sort of subsumed into Judah, and the kingdom of Judah was largely made up from the tribe of Judah, from where we all come from. So that's how we got our name, Jews. Of course, the Hebrew word for Jew is Yehudi, from the word Yehudah, Jew, and that's where it comes from. The confusing thing is that our modern state of Israel, which has in it lots of Jews, is called Israel. And the northern kingdom, which was split off from Judah, was called Israel. In fact, maybe Danny knows more about this than I, but I read once that there was some discussion prior to the establishment of the state of Israel as to whether the new state, which was to be born in 1948, was in fact going to be called Israel, or whether it was going to be called Judea. In the end, obviously, as we know, they plumped for the name Israel. But that's a little bit confusing for us, because what we're talking about when we speak about the kingdom of Israel is we're talking about the northern kingdom here after the split in 930, around about 930 BCE. This was a time of civil war, basically. The kingdom split. The capital of the southern kingdom of Judah was Jerusalem, indicated there by the star. The capital of the northern kingdom of Israel was in the Shomron, Samaria. Okay, it's an important name, which we'll see very shortly why it's so important. And those were the two kingdoms. Ephraim was the leader of the kingdom of Israel. Judah, of course, was the leader of the kingdom of Judah down in the south. Now, at this time, around a couple of hundred years later, to 300 years later, we have the rise of the Assyrian Empire. Not the Syrian Empire, the Assyrian Empire, A-S-S-Y-R-I-A-N, the Assyrian Empire. So this over here, this map is the Assyrian Empire of round about 700, 800, 700 BCE onwards for a couple of hundred years. It's a massive empire. If I show you a current, just keep that little map in your mind for the moment. It goes all the way down here from Egypt through the Sinai Peninsula, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, bit of Turkey, all the way across Iraq, Iran, and just keep that map in mind. That is our modern day map for the Middle East. You can see Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and if I take you back to the Assyrian Empire, you can see what a huge empire the Assyrians had. Now, this area here of Israel, northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, was a thorn in every empire's side. The previous empire to the Assyrians were the Egyptians, and we know that the Egyptians had form and history with the Israelites. The Assyrians had trouble with them. Later on, the Medes and the Persians, who took over from the Assyrians, their empire, which we'll come to shortly, they also had trouble with these stubborn Jews here over in, well, let's not call them Jews, let's call them Israelites over here. Later on, the Greeks came along and they had trouble with them, and they had all the stories of the Hashmonaim and Hanukkah. And of course, later on, the Romans, and we gave them trouble as well. And that ended up with the destruction of the Second Temple. So whatever empire has ruled this part of the world, this little tract of land over here of Judah and Israel has been troublesome. And it was troublesome in the time of the Assyrian Empire. Now, what we know quite a lot about the Assyrian Empire, because there's lots of things that we can see in the British Museum, for example. You will see something that looks like that. That is called the Black Obelisk. I don't know why it's called Black Obelisk. It doesn't look very black to me, but anyway, that's what it's called. It definitely is an obelisk. There it is. You can see it in its full glory there. It's called the Black Obelisk, and it's belonged to the King Shalmaneser III, who was reigning in around about the 9th century BCE. And this relief on the Black Obelisk is of great interest to us because it depicts the tribute paid to the Assyrian Emperor Shalmaneser by a king of the northern kingdom. And that king was King Jehu. King Jehu, who was the 10th king of the northern kingdom of Israel. There are various estimates of when he reigned, but most people think he reigned for 28 years, around about 842 to 815 BCE. Just to give you your compass point, David HaMelech reigned in 1000 BCE. So we're talking 150 years after David HaMelech. Now, where do we know about King Jehu from? We know about King Jehu from over here. Melachim Bet, 2 Kings, chapter 9. Have a look at this verse here, verse 2. Go from verse 1. Elisha, the prophet, summoned one of the disciples of the prophets and said to him, go off to this place called Ramoth Gilad, and over there you'll see this guy called Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat. and make him into the king. If you read this chapter, if you want to go read it later on, you can read about King Jehu. This is the chap. King Jehu was the 10th king of the northern kingdom of Israel. He was the one that was subservient to Shalmaneser III, and this big black obelisk in the British Museum represents the tribute paid by King Jehu to the Assyrians. The Assyrians were in the ascendancy. The northern kingdom of Israel is weakening at this time in history. There are other things that we know about the Assyrian Empire, also from the British Empire, the British Museum, and there is what's this here? No, not that. Where is it? I've lost it now. But anyway, there is another relief which you can find in the British Museum from a place called Nineveh. Nineveh is a place which, as you can see from this map here, is in northern Iraq. Iraq used to be called Mesopotamia. It used to be called Bavel. And Nineveh is known to us from the Haftarah of Yom Kippur afternoon, the book of Jonah. Jonah the prophet was sent to Nineveh to tell them to repent. And Nineveh was a capital of the Assyrian Empire at that time. So we can also see in the British Museum, there is another relief, which you'll see, which I did have on my screen, but I can't just find it right now. It has a relief of the capture of a city by the Assyrians, and the Jews are the prisoners of war. And that was on a palace in Nineveh. That palace belonged to King Sancherib. You might have heard of King Sancherib. He was the one that besieged the city of Lachish. And the relief that you will see in the British Museum is of all the prisoners of war from Lachish building the palace at Nineveh. Now, the palace at Nineveh was a very famous palace, and the British stripped it to pieces when they went in there and took it all to the British Museum. So that's the historical background to what we're talking about. Now, in the 6th century BCE, the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III strengthens Assyria and establishes it at its peak as its great empire. And he introduces a new punishment for the people of his empire. Brand new punishment. Nobody's ever thought of this before. We know it very well because we have suffered from it for thousands of years. But in the 6th century BCE, this was something rather novel, and it was called exile. What they did was they took the people from where they went to invade. They invaded a place, they conquered a place, and they took those people and they took them out of their home environment and they plonked them somewhere else. And they took other people from a different place in their empire and plonked them in the place where they'd just taken other people from. In other words, they did musical chairs in terms of peoples. The peoples were exiled. They were moved all over the place. They were displaced. They were exiled. Now, we know about exile, don't we? Because we were exiled by the Assyrians ourselves. Judah, the kingdom of Judah, after the kingdom of the northern kingdom of Israel, was exiled after the destruction of the first temple. Later on, we were exiled from the same area by the Romans in 70 CE after the destruction of the second temple. We were exiled from just about every country that you can think of in Europe through the Middle Ages. We've been exiled. We are experts at exile. And the first exile that we ever suffered was at the hands of the Assyrians. And the people who suffered first from exile were the northern kingdom of Israel. Now, that is a map of the biblical apportionment of the tribes of Israel from the time of Joshua. Joshua crossed the River Jordan, and the idea was that the Bnei Israel, the Israelites, would conquer the land, and they were given various tribal territories. Each tribe was given its territory that it was to go and conquer. Now, I'm sorry that map's a bit small, but I've got a bigger one here, which you can see better. So we'll go from the south. The south, we've got Gaza over here, just to give you your bearings. Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Jaffa, okay? And going up to the north, there's obviously Haifa and Akko in the little bay there. And we've got the Kinneret over here. And then we've got Tyre, which is in Lebanon. And we've got Sidon over there. This is the biblical land of Israel to the west of the River Jordan, the west bank of the River Jordan. On the east bank of the River Jordan, we have 2.5 tribes. You'll remember from Sefer Dvarim, where the 2.5 tribes, actually 2 tribes, Reuven and Gad, come along to Moshe and say, we quite like it on this side of the Jordan. Do you mind if we stay here and have our territory over here? Moshe says, not on your Nelly. What, you think you're going to stay over here and all your brothers are going to go and fight battles? And they say, no. We'll go and fight with them. Not only that, we'll go first and fight with them. And then when we've finished, we'll come back and live over here. And that's what they did. And the tribe of Manasseh, which you can see is rather large here.
No battery, please charge.
Can you all mute yourself, please? Because I haven't got an all mute button on my screen at the moment. I'll try and get one so that I can do it for you. 1 second. I don't know where it is. Anyway, all mute yourself, please. So Manasseh, half of Manasseh is here and half of Manasseh is on the other side. So remember, our Assyrian Empire is largely to the north and east of Israel. Israel is over here, where my little pointer's going up and down. And the main part of the empire is north and east of Israel. So if we go back to our map here, the main empire of the Assyrians is over here, where we've got Arameans here, because that was where it was before. So when they start to become in the ascendancy and they decide that they are going to invade this little land here called Israel because they're giving trouble, the first people that they come across are the northern tribes, of course. They don't come down to Judah, they come in from the north. So the first people that they meet are Naphtali and Asher. And Naphtali and Asher are the first tribes, and Zvulun, they are the first tribes to get exiled. Naphtali, Asher, and Zvulun get exiled straight away by the Assyrians as they come into Israel. Now, where they go, we'll come to a little bit later on. Later on, another Assyrian Empire, Shalmaneser V, then goes a bit further, and he exiles the rest of Zvulun and Gad and Manasseh. He's going south, as you can see. Zvulun, Manasseh, and Gad, they get exiled. They're then booted out of their lands. And then finally, in the middle of the 6th century, in 556 BCE, Sargon II, one of the greatest emperors of the Assyrian Empire, completes the job. Ephraim and Dan are exiled, and then the whole of the northern state of Israel ceases to be Israelite, and that is the end of the northern kingdom of Israel. So the northern kingdom of Israel lasted from around about 930, when the kingdom split, to around about 556, when the job was finished off by Sargon II. 400 years of Israelite settlement of this northern part of the land comes to an end. And we read about this. We read about it in our holy books. We read about it over here in Malachim Bet, 2 Kings, chapter 18. Have a look over here. Actually, it's actually in chapter 17. First of all, let me go back to chapter 17, to the previous chapter. There we go. There's chapter 17, verse 6. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, Shomron, and exiled the Israelites to Assyria. And he repatriated them, and this is very, very important. So we'll come back to these names time and again over the next 45 minutes. And he repatriated them to Halach, Chavor, and the Gozan River, and the cities of Media. In Hebrew, Bachlach, Chavor, and Nahar Gozan. These three places. That's where these tribes, that's where these Israelites were exiled to. So now you've got an empty northern kingdom. So what did the Assyrians do? There were a bunch of other people who they had taken from their empire before. Where's our empire? There it is. Somewhere, some people where they'd got from over here, and they plonked them where they'd taken the Israelites from. Okay, so that's what they were all about. That's what this new punishment of exile was. All these people went over east to the Assyrian Empire, and the people from the east were sent over here. And because the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel was the Shomron, Samaria, these people became known as Shomronim, or in English, the Samaritans. Now, some of you may have heard of the Samaritans. Those of you who went to religious studies classes in your non-Jewish secondary schools will have heard all about the Samaritans. Some of you may have heard of the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan in what is known by the Christians as the New Testament. Now, as far as the Jews were concerned, the Samaritans were not good at all, because these Samaritans sort of converted to Judaism, but they didn't properly convert to Judaism, and they were never fully accepted by the Jews as Jews. When I say Jews, I'm talking about the folk here in Judah. They were not accepted as Jews. They were very much second-class citizens, and there was lots of hostility between the Jews and the Samaritans. So the name Samaritans comes from this whole concept of exile. They replaced our 10 lost tribes. The Samaritans, I won't say they displaced them, because they were equally disadvantaged, because they'd been taken from their homes and they had been sent to the Shomron, to Samaria, and they were, as it were, exiled in Samaria in the same way as our northern tribes here were exiled over to those three places that we spoke about over here, to Halach, Chavor, and the Gozan River. So we can read about, we know all about the exile because it's there in Malachim Bet. Now, so there are still some Shomronim, by the way, still here in Israel. They have their own sect. They have their own sort of cult, really. They are based in Har Gerizim, which is right next to the city of Shechem, which you will know from Tanakh. Shechem was the city seat of the tribe of Yosef. Yosef was given Shechem as a gift by Yaakov. Shechem was the city where the brothers of Dinah went in and massacred the people after having circumcised them following the rape of Dinah. Shechem today is known by its Arab name as Nablus. So the city of Nablus today is the city of Shechem. And nearby Shechem, you will find a small cult of people called the Samaritans or the Shomronim. And they still have, they keep a very different type of Torah to us, but it has some similarities. By the way, just as an interesting fact, one of my sons, who was in the army a few years ago, was stationed at one point around that part of the border, and one of his jobs was to protect the Shomronim from various skirmishes. And one of the ways you could always tell a Shomroni, apparently, is they all have very big ears. They all look alike and they all have big ears. So if you see if you're foolish enough to go around Nablus these days and you see somebody looking Semitic with big ears, he's probably a Shomroni. Now, we know now that our 10 tribes were exiled. But we have a prophecy. We have a prophecy that those 10 tribes will be returned to us. And that prophecy is in a very, very famous chapter of the prophet Ezekiel, or in Hebrew, Yechezkel. And here it is. This is a very famous prophecy. Then anybody who has not read chapter 37 of Yechezkel, I strongly recommend it to you. It's an amazing, amazing chapter. It's a chapter about the dry bones. Some of you may be familiar with that. The dry bones that come to life. I'll send you on chat later on afterwards a link to a shiur which I gave a few weeks ago on this particular chapter. I gave this shiur for Yom HaAtzmaut, in honor of Yom HaAtzmaut, because it's very powerful for Yom HaAtzmaut, and I'll send you a link to that. But in this same chapter, which talks about the resurrection of the dry bones, the resurrection of the people of Israel, you will see, if you go down to verse 15, the second part of Yechezkel's prophecy. The first part is about the dry bones which become covered with muscle and sinew and skin, and they become alive again. But then there's a second prophecy, and have a look at verse 15 onwards, and it says, this is Yechezkel speaking, the prophet Ezekiel. And the word of Hashem came to me saying, and you, son of man, take for yourself a stick. Take for yourself a stick and write on it, for Yehudah and for the children of Israel and his companions. And take another stick and write on it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, the house of Israel. So Yechezkel is told to take two separate sticks, one which represents the tribe of Judah and one which represents the tribe of Ephraim, which is the northern kingdom of Israel. Ephraim is the leader of the 10 tribes. And then he says, verse 17, bring them close together. Bring these two sticks together, and they shall be like one in your hand. The sticks miraculously merge into one. And when the children of your people say to you, will you not tell us what are these things to you? Say to them, so says Hashem, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim and the tribes of Israel, and I will place them with the stick of Judah, and I will make them into one stick, and they shall become one in my hand. Look at the capital M, in my hand, in God's hand. This prophecy is the prophecy of Kibbutz Galuyot, the ingathering of the exiles. This is where it comes from. This chapter in Yechezkel tells us that at a certain time in the future, God will bring back the 10 tribes who have been exiled, the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom of Israel, which was led by Ephraim, represents the kingdom of Joseph, led by Ephraim. It will come back to the kingdom of Judah, and they will merge into one, and they will become like one in the hand of God. God is telling us through the words of Ezekiel that at the end of days, whatever that means, they will be a coming back of all the people from the 10 lost tribes, and that will be the kibbutz galuyot, the ingathering of the exiles. That is where it comes from. So that is what we are talking about here when we're talking about the 10 lost tribes. These are the 10 exiled tribes who we now perhaps have an opportunity to bring back and have the prophecy of Ezekiel fulfilled maybe in our lifetime. So let's have a look and see where we can find these lost tribes. So the truth is, actually, we're actually really only looking for 8 of them now, because 2 of them have well and truly been found. We spoke earlier on about Danny Limor and his amazing work and activity that went on to bring back Shevet Dan, the Ethiopian people, the Ethiopian Jews, the Jews that came back from Ethiopia after all those years, those thousands of years of exile. They are recognized very clearly to be the tribe of Dan. They are Shevet Dan. So we can tick a box, thanks to Danny Limor in great amounts. We can tick a box. Dan has been found. And just to give you a little taster of it, there's some of our wonderful tribe of Dan. Can you see that picture, everyone? Yeah? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the picture. Yeah, lovely. These are some of our lovely Ethiopian Jews taking all sorts of roles, as you can see here, in the army and throughout the whole gamut of Israeli society. You will find Ethiopian Jews playing a massive part, and that is Shevet Dan. So we can tick Dan has been done well and truly. Those of you who want to read about it in detail, there are various books about it, the return of Dan. Of course, there are various films about it. I asked, Danny Limor gave a talk a couple of, I don't know how long ago, years, maybe about a year or so ago, in our shul. There was about 150, 180 people there. He spoke for 2 hours and 45 minutes. And there was not a person left. And the only person that actually left after 2 hours and 45 minutes because he needed a wee. It was absolutely enthralling. There was not a sound to be heard. And we heard it in great detail. It's an amazing story. That's Shevet Dan. We also know where Shevet Manasseh is. We found Shevet Manasseh. On the volatile border of the India and Burma, in the area of Manipur, there is a tribe called Manasseh. These lovely looking people, they look very Indian looking, don't they? These are the Indian B'nai Manasseh. And over the recent years, this tribe has been accepted by the chief rabbinate in Israel as being the tribe of Manasseh. And I say that rather quickly, although this is not something to be glossed over. The fact that this has been accepted by the chief rabbinate, Danny will tell you when he does his full talk in a couple of weeks' time, that to get anything accepted by the chief rabbinate in Israel is very difficult indeed. And to get outsiders like these people to come and be accepted by the chief rabbinate is an extremely difficult task. I won't say impossible, because it's not impossible, because when you've got people working at it like Danny and others working hard, it can be achieved, but it's very difficult. But the chief rabbinate has accepted this. Look at this over here. After 27 centuries of exile, 102 Indian B'nai Manasseh head to Israel. That was an article here in the, I think it was the Times of Israel. Yeah, there it is, the Times of Israel, back in February 2017. Some lovely pictures here of these people arriving back in Israel after 27 centuries of exile. I mean, amazing thought. 27 centuries of exile. These people have returned. So that's Manasseh. And it's very interesting. We'll talk a little bit about Manasseh because they have various customs, and they have some songs, and one of their songs, a very powerful song of theirs, talks about a big red sea being parted and them passing through. It talks about them going through the wilderness and picking up birds off the floor. You'll remember the story in Sefer Bamidbar, which we read about the Slav, about the quail, when the Jewish people, the Israelite people, I should say, complained to Moshe and said, "We want meat." And God said, "I'll give you meat. I'll give you that much meat. It'll come out of your nostrils. You'll be sick of it." And there was meat all over the place and quails all over the place. And they picked these off the floor. The Bnei Manasseh have an old song about it. They also have another song about drinking water from a rock. And of course, we all know from our Torah the stories of the Bnei Israel being watered from the Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam, which was the rock which Moshe struck to get the water out. The men of Bnei Manasseh, by the way, when they make a vow, when they make a promise, they put on a prayer shawl, which has a very striking resemblance to a talit. And when there is an earthquake in their area, they climb up onto the roof of their buildings and they shout words to the effect of, "The people of Manasseh are here," because they believe that an earthquake is God shaking the world, looking for the Bnei Manasseh. And he's shaking the world, trying to find them. You know, when you've got something stuck in somewhere and you're shaking it to get them out. They believe that an earthquake is God shaking the world to find Bnei Manasseh who are lost. So they stand on their rooftops and they shout out that Bnei Manasseh, "We're here, God, we're here. The people of Manasseh are still here." So we can pretty much tick the box of Manasseh as well. So we've got 8 tribes to try and find. So where are we going to look for these tribes? Well, we are quite fortunate because we do have a bit of a treasure map. We know where these, at least where these tribes started out from. We've already mentioned it. It's mentioned in a couple of places. It's mentioned over here in Malachim Bet. We mentioned it before. The king of Assyria repatriated them to Chalach, Chabor, and the Gozan River. Many years later, in a book called Divrei Hayamim, otherwise known in English as Chronicles, Chronicles 1 or 1 Chronicles, Divrei Hayamim Aleph, chapter 5. If we have a look at verse 26 down over here, we will see, "And the Lord inspired Pul, the king of Assyria, and Tilak-Pilneser, the king of Assyria, and they exiled Reuven and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh." Let's go back to our map, if I can find it. I think it's there. There we are. Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. They exiled. So this was the final bit here of the exile. Reuven, Gad, and Manasseh. They were exiled. Let's say where they went. Where did they go to? Lo and behold, they went to the same places. They went to Chalach, Chabor, Hara, an extra place is slotted in there, a place called Hara, Unahar Gozan, and the Gozan River, Ad Hayom Hazeh, until this day, says Chronicles. So we know that all these tribes that we had a picture of just a few minutes ago, over here, Naphtali, Asher, Manasseh, Gad, Reuven, Ephraim, Dan, all of these people went to these places. They went to Chalach, Chavor, Chara, and the Gozan River. Now, if that's where they went, then maybe we can find them. So we have to try and find these places. That's the first place we're going to look. Now, as it happens, we know that this empire stretched all the way across here. So these places could be anywhere across here. Where these places are likely to be is somewhere along this line. Somewhere along this line. This is the ancient Silk route. This is the ancient trade route from the east through to the Middle East, through Israel, through Syria, through Israel, as you can see here where my little pointer is, through to Egypt, and then off into the west. So this was the most important route of the ancient times. It was called the Silk route. Now, whenever an exiled people are moving around, they're going to go after two things. They're going to go after water, because you can't live where there isn't water, and they're going to go after trade. And a people who are not settled in one particular place will, and the Israelites, we're known as the wandering Jews, aren't we? I mean, these was even before the wandering Jews. They were wandering Israelites because they were not settled. They came from over here, from the northern kingdom of Israel, and they were exiled. So you are likely to find most of them somewhere along this line of the ancient Silk route. So the first thing we're going to do is to try and look for these places of Chavor, of Hara, of the Gozan River, and Chalach, as we've just spoken about in the Psukim of Divrei Hayamim over here, and in the Psukim of Malachim Bet over here. So the Median Empire, which came after the Assyrians, I'm sorry I haven't got a bigger map of that, so you can't struggle and strain to see the words. It doesn't matter. It's just to give you an idea of the extent of the Median Empire. The Medes and the Persians obviously are Iraq, modern day Iraq, stretched all the way over here. This was the empire of Ahasuerus, who we read about in Megillat Esther, who, as we know, had 127 provinces, Mehodu ve'ad Kush, from Ethiopia to India, or India to Ethiopia, literally. And so that is the Median Empire. Now, that's the same thing. What's the next thing I've got? Right. So the first thing we're going to try and find is these cities of Chavor, Chara, and the Gozan River. Now, if you look carefully, you will find that Naphtali was taken. You'll find this from the Assyrian reliefs that we spoke about before, many of which were in the British Empire. They were taken to the Median border of what is now current day Iran. So somewhere over here, that's where they were taken to first. Now, the thing about this was that there were regular Jewish communities already over there. And they will have got swallowed up by those communities. So we're not going to find remnants over there. They will have gone further east along our Silk route. They will have gone along further east along our Silk route. But we need to remember the names. Why do we need to remember the names? Because these tribes that went from the northern kingdom of Israel into exile, from Naphtali, from Asher, from Manasseh, all these places, when they went, they knew their history, and they knew where they went, and they knew that this would be recorded, and they know that they would have been recorded. These were the places they went to: Chalach, Chavor, Chara, and the Gozan River. So when they moved east, along this route, they will have taken the names with them. Now, if you're going to tell me that's a bit far-fetched, they're going to take the names of their cities with them, let me remind you of what the Americans did. When they established the United States of America, what did they do? They went from England on the Mayflower and they took with them English names. You have New York, you have New Hampshire, you have Birmingham in Alabama, you have Manchester, you have all sorts of English places, English place names which are now transported into the new country. They took the old names of York, of Hampshire, of all these places, and they took them with them to America, and they called their new cities by the same names. And this is what we think the tribes would have done. They would have gone originally to the original Khyber, Kharat, and Gozan River, and they will have taken them as they went along their travels, along this route here. They will have gone and taken the names with them. And so therefore we need to look for those kind of names. Now, because we're on the Silk Route, if you can see, I don't know if I can make this map any bigger. I can make it a bit bigger, a little bit bigger. I don't know if you can read where my little pointer is. Right in the middle there of the Silk Route is a place called Bukhara. Bukhara is in Uzbekistan. And there's another one called Samarkand. Samarkand. These were two major cities on the Silk Route. I've got better maps of them somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. This is a modern map here. And we'll just go out a bit. No, we'll go out a bit and have a look. Bukhara in Uzbekistan and Samarkand. This is on that Silk Route that I just showed you. Now, it just so happens that in Bukhara, there is a Jewish community of indeterminate origin, as it so happens. They call themselves Israelites. They're not from the tribe of Judah, and they have a very common name. The most common name in Bukhara, in the Bukharan community, is Issacharov. Issacharov. That is a very, very common name amongst the Jews, or amongst the Israelites, amongst the people of Bukhara. Issacharov. So I think it's a fair suggestion, at least, that the community of Bukhara, the Jewish community of Bukhara from Uzbekistan, is possibly, I won't go any further than that, is possibly the tribe of Issachar. Now, if you look at their customs, these Issacharofs, they have very, very traditional customs. They eat proper matzah at Pesach. The way they slaughter their animals is very reminiscent of kashrut, including salting and including the discarding of the sciatic nerve, the Gid HaNasher. Most of the Bukharian Jews now have moved to Israel, and they have quite a large neighborhood near Mea She'arim. They don't claim to be from any specific tribe, to be fair, but many of the seekers of the 10 tribes believe that they are from the tribe of Issachar. Now, if you go into a museum in Bukhara, hidden in the basement, you will find enormous amounts of evidence of an Israelite history. There are ancient Torah scrolls there. There are shards of pottery with Aramaic writing on it. There are silver plates with it written on, Pidyon Haben, the redemption of the firstborn. There are pointers, Torah pointers, which look very similar to the kind of things we use to point to the Torah now. and there are all sorts of prayer books, and they're all locked away by the Bukharan authorities, who don't really want to admit that there were people living there before what they call the indigenous population. This museum had a reference to a kingdom in the 4th and 5th centuries CE. Okay, so we're talking something like 800-900 years after the exile that we're talking about. So 800 or 900 years after, we have evidence in Bukhara of a tribe of Israelites who happen to be called Issachar. Now, this reference to the kingdom in the 4th and 5th century has a reference to another group of people in that region called Hephthalites. In English, it's spelled Hephthalites, and they were a warrior nation, and they did not originate in the Asiatic region. They came from the west. They merit a 2-line mention in the Encyclopedia Britannica. And in Encyclopedia Britannica, we're told that they ruled for 2 centuries, and they are also given another name in the Encyclopedia Britannica. They're called the Hephthalites, and they're also called the Naphtalites. Naphtalites. Now, what does that remind you of? Naphtali, the Naphtalites. Now, they came from the west. Could they be the tribe of Naphtali? So, if you look at the other major city here in this area on the Silk Route, where's our Silk Route? Is that our Silk Route? No, there's our Silk Route. There's Bukhara, and there's Samarkand on the Silk Route. So if we go back to our Silk Route, there we have, we go back to a modern map, I should say. There's Bukhara, and 4 hours away by car is Samarkand, where there is a community there, and the thought is that is where the Naphtalites were. So it's possible, only possible, again, that the Naphtalites were that community over there in Samarkand. There's a possible remnants of Issachar here, and I will say no more than a ghost of a chance that this is Naphtali over here. So, if we think we've got Issachar roundabout over here, Issachar was very, very close. I don't mean necessarily close in proximity, although it was close in proximity as well. What I mean is close in brotherliness. There's Issachar. It was close in proximity to his brother. Issachar's brother was Zevulun. As we know, there is a tradition that Issachar and Zevulun made a pact that one tribe, Issachar, would be the merchants, and Zvulun would be the other way around. Sorry, Issachar would be the Torah learners, and Zvulun would be the merchants. They would be the money makers, and they would support the Torah learners of Issachar, the students. Issachar and Zvulun were very, very closely connected. So if we think that we have found our Issachar in Bukhara, then we need to go looking for Zvulun close by. In northern India, okay, northern India, further down here, we have a tribe known as Javula, J-A-V-U-L-A, okay, Javula. Now, the J and the Z are interchangeable, not in so much in the Ashkenazi pronunciation, but J and Z, J and Z are interchangeable in the same way as in Aramaic, T and Sh are interchangeable. So if you interchange your Javula with a Z, you end up with Zavula, very similar to Zavulun. Now, in this area in northern India of this tribe of Zavula, in their ancient archives, you will find lots of coins, and they have a king, the name of a king. As you know, the name of the king in Egypt is always Pharaoh. Pharaoh Ramesses, Pharaoh this, Pharaoh that. Pharaoh was the name given to the king. That was his title. The title of the king of the tribe of Zavula is Miragola. In English, it's spelled Miragola, Miragola, which in Hebrew means light of the exile. Mira, from the light, or is light. Gola, as you know, is exile. Miragola, light of the exile. Now, guess what their most famous king was called? The most famous king of the tribe of the Zavula is this fellow here. And look at his name. Torah Mana. Torah Amana. Torah, we know what Torah is. Amana means I believe. Belief in the Torah. The name of this king of Miragola Torah Mana means light of the exile who believes in the Torah. So their most famous king has a name imitating the Torah belief. The name of the king's title is called Miragola. And guess what their capital city was called? Their capital city was called Baruch. B-A-R-U-C-H. If you look it up in Wikipedia. Baruch. Okay, these are all very circumstantial, I grant you, but they're quite strong pieces of circumstantial evidence. So, if you have a look over there, you'll find that there are clues here that this Zavula people in northern India and Kashmir area have some flavor, at least, of the tribe of Zavulun. Okay, now, where could these people be now? So now I want to take you over to the Jewish communities of Bombay and Cochin. They call themselves Bnei Israel. There is a synagogue in a place called Penn. And there is a group of Jews, as you will know, Cochin and Bombay have Jews. We have some lovely descendants of Bombay and Cochin Jews in our own community here in Ramat Poleg. Those of you who are from Poleg will know who I'm talking about. Eitan Elias and his family are Cochin Jews, and they call themselves Bnei Israel. And in case you think that this is a one-off place, that they have this one nice little pink synagogue, have a look at this. Oh no, not that. Oh, I've lost it. Where's it gone? Oh, I had a lovely picture of all the synagogues in India. See if I can find it very quickly. Let me just have a look. Synagogues in India. I had it a minute ago before I let you all in, and I've lost it now. See if it comes up. It doesn't. There we go. There we go. Have a look at that. Now, I'm going to show you here. You'll see our Penn synagogue in a second when it comes up. Loads of them. Lots of them. This is only a few of them. The previous map that I had loads of them. Look at all these over here. And there are lots of synagogues in India. And this one over here that I had a picture of is in Penn in India. And this is the Bnei Israel. there it is. I found it. Sorry, I got it ready there. There it is. Can you see that? There's our, this is the map of that area. Look how many synagogues there are in this area. That one that I showed you the picture of is this one here. Bet El Elohim, Pen Synagogue, temporarily closed, it says, in India. And these people are the Bnei Israel. Now, they have a ceremony called the Melida, M-E-L-I-D-A, and it is a ceremony of offering scented flowers and a sort of sacrifice of scents and flowers and rice and all sorts of things. Very similar, it sounds very similar to the Ketoret, to the incense that was brought in our temple. Now, their most sacred character of the Bnei Israel is not Moshe, it's not David, it is Eliyahu Hanavi. And their most revered place is a place where they believe Eliyahu Hanavi ascended to heaven. It's a place 100 miles south of Bombay, or Mumbai as we should call it now. And there are apparently hoof marks and chariot marks on this rock. And that is where Eliyahu Hanavi went to back up to heaven. There is a cave in northern Israel in the territory of Zevulun. There is a cave in the territory of Zevulun, which is called Eliyahu's cave. And that cave is the sacred place of this Bnei Israel, and it's in the territory of Zvulun, and we think that this may well be the tribe of Zvulun. They have a tradition of how they ended up in India. They have they have a tradition that they were on a ship and they got shipwrecked, and they ended up only 7 couples survived, and they ended up in there. So we're running out of time, really, but I want to just recap what we've got so far. What we've got so far is we think we've got Dan, who are the Ethiopians. We think we've got Manasseh, who are the Bnei Manasseh of Manipur. We think we've got Issachar and Naphtali in Bukhara and Samarkand. And we think we may have the remnants of Zvulun in the Bnei Israel of Western India. Now, if we add all those up, we get to a few 100,000 at the most. 120,000 or so Ethiopians, 10,000 Bnei Manasseh, 150,000 Bukharians, and a handful of Bnei Israel. Now, the prophecy of Yechezkel indicates that these 2 sticks will be equal, and that will be equal numbers of Judah and Ephraim. So we're missing quite a lot. There are at the moment 13 or 14 million Jews from the tribe of Judah in the world. We've only got maybe 500,000, not even, of all those tribes that we've found. Dan, Manasseh, Issachar, Naphtali, Zvulun. We've only got 500,000 or so. So we've got to find the rest. We're missing, in case you haven't worked it out, we're missing. Oh, hang on, let me turn that phone off. Sorry. We're missing Reuven, Shimon, Gad, Asher, and Ephraim. We're missing 5 tribes. We reckon may have got 5 of them. We've got 5 missing. Reuven, Shimon, Gad, Asher, and Ephraim. So now we've got to try and find them. We've got to go back to our treasure map. We've got to go back to the places that we know they went to. They went to Chavor, they went to Harat, they went to the river Gozan. Okay, now let's start with Chavor. Some of you will be familiar with a place which is one of the most dangerous places in the world to go to, and it's called in English the Khyber Pass. Those of you who have not heard of it, it's over here in Afghanistan, over this area, the Khyber Pass. Some of you may be familiar with it from a very funny film from the 1960s called Carry On Up the Khyber Pass. Jonathan Raymond was a big favourite of that. Khyber is English, but look how it's spelt. K-H-Y-B-R. Khyber, Chavor, the Chavor Pass. This is Chavor. In Hebrew, the Khyber Pass is Chavor. Okay. Another one of our places on our treasure map was Harat. Harat, look over here. Another place on the Silk Route, right across from Chavor, is Harat. Now, if I scroll in, I need to scroll in, I think, not out. Wait a minute. If I scroll right in over here to our area somewhere over here, I am going to come across a place which is called Gazani. I can't just find it right now, but you'll have to take my word for it. It's over here somewhere. Over here, there is a river. Let's see if I can scroll out, maybe I'll find it. Anyway, there's a river over here. There it is, found it, Gazani. Can you see it over there? Let me go a bit bigger, see if you can see it. Can you see Ghazni there? Where I'm circling that, it says Ghazni, G-H-A-Z-N-I. And if I make that bigger, you'll see that there's a river there. There's a city on a river. Let's go right into Ghazni, and you'll see there's a river called the River Ghazni there. That white thing there is a river. It's called the River Ghazni, the River Gozan. So we have in a little triangle, here, Khyber, Harat, and Ghazni, the three places where the Torah itself, well, the Tanakh itself, tells us the tribes were exiled to. Now, let's go and have a look and see if there are any Israelites there. There must be, because this is where the Tanakh tells us that. Now, do you know who these people are that live in this area? If you want to cross the Khyber Pass, there is only one way to do it, and you need to be accompanied by guides. You can't do it on your own. And the people who will guide you there are a tribe called the Pashtu tribe. And they have been guarding the Khyber Pass for over 2,000 years that we know of. Okay? The Khyber Pass in Hebrew is called Chavor. Okay? A city nearby, a big city nearby Khyber is Peshawar. Peshawar. Okay? Split that up and you get Pes Avor. Pes, the Khyber Pass. This is where we think Chavor is. So if this is Chavor, we know that Harat must be close by, and there it is. And we know that Gaz, the river Gozan, must be close by, and there it is there. So we have our three places. So let's have a look. It's time to take a bit closer look at this Pashtu people. Now, if you look at these people, on the face of it, they are fundamentalist Muslims. They are affiliated to the Taliban and the Northern Alliance of Afghanistan. They are fiercely tribal, and they like to be left alone to get on with their own lives. But if you examine their practices very carefully, these Pashtu, they have their own set of rules called Pashtuwali. Now, when the laws of the Quran conflict with the laws of the Pashtuwali, the Pashtu tribe go by the laws of the Pashtuwali, not by the Quran. The Pashtuwali, as it were, trumps the Quran. For example, in a case of adultery, in Islamic Sharia law, you'll have to take my word for this, in Islamic Sharia law, in a case of adultery, you do not need any witnesses. You just need an accusation of adultery, and you're finished. However, under Pashtuwali law, you cannot execute an alleged adulterer or adulteress unless you have two witnesses. In the Torah, we're told that any capital crime cannot be found guilty unless there are two witnesses. Okay? If you observe the Pashto people studying the Quran, and apparently, I have it on good authority, I've never seen it, but I have it on good authority, they are the only tribe, when they're studying the Quran, that they do this. They shokol a yeshiva bocher. Now, I'm not suggesting that that makes them into yeshiva bocherim. It's just interesting. The women of the Pashto tribe light candles on a Friday night. If a man dies with no children, his widow has to marry his brother. That is called yibum in the Torah. Yibum. We don't do it anymore. We do chalitza, but in Torah, that is what you have to do. If a man dies childless, he marries, his widow marries the brother. The exact same thing in the Pashto tribe. If somebody kills somebody by mistake in the Pashto tribe, they have designated cities to which they can run, to which the killer can run, and they are like cities of refuge, exactly like we have in our Torah, the Arei Miklat. And they are looked after there in those cities, those Pashto cities, by the elders. And they have a very literal translation. If you poke somebody's eye out and you're a Pashto, you'll know what happens to you. You get your eye poked out, because ayin tachat ayin, an eye for an eye. Now, if you look at these people, there they are. Can you see them? Now they look like they could have just stepped right out of the Tanakh. Look at him. Look at this one here. Now you could be excused for thinking that he had just stepped right out of our Tanakh shiur of this morning. He could have come right out of our Tanakh shiur. They don't look like all the others. Some of them are very pale skinned, some of the Pashto. Now, if you look at them, they live in extended families, and their women are only allowed in the kitchen and the bedroom, and they're only allowed out to go to one place. And the one place they go to is the well, and that's where they congregate. Now think about the Torah. Where did Moshe meet Zipporah? At the well. Where did Eliezer meet Rivka for Yitzchak? At the well. Where did Yaakov meet Rachel? At the well. All the love stories in the Torah revolve around the well. The well is a place for women to go to. The shepherdesses congregated around the well. My son, who is a rabbi over in Perth, who did some research on this, he spoke to a rabbi of the tiny Afghani Jewish community, not these Pashtuns, but the real, inverted commas, Jewish community of Afghanistan. And he asked them, this rabbi, do these people think that they are Jews? Do they think they're Jewish? And the rabbi said to him, they think they're the only Jewish people. They don't think that we're Jewish. They think that they are the Jews. They are the descendants of the tribes, and we're not the real thing at all. So they believe themselves to be more Jewish than us. So we've got a people here who observe a form of biblical Judaism with all the folklore, who are in exactly the places that our treasure map tells us they're going to be, in Chavor, in Harat, and in Ghazni. They're in that place. And guess what the names of the tribes of the Pashto are? These are some of the names. Rubani, Reuven. Shinwari, Shimon. Jadun, or Gadun, Gad. Ashuri, Asher. And the most famous of all the Pashto tribes, Afridi, Ephraim. Afridi is a very, very common name in the Pashtun tribes. There was a very famous cricketer, Michael Leaf. I don't know if you're listening to us here. You'll remember Shahid Afridi from a few years ago from Pakistan. very famous Pakistani cricketer, Shahid Afridi. Afridi is a very, very common name. Now, the most numerous tribe and the leading tribe in Israel was Ephraim. The northern kingdom was Ephraim. The most numerous tribe in the Pashtun is Afridi. There's even another tribe, a sub-tribe, called the Waziri. Now, wa and na are interchangeable, so change those over and you have Naziri. And this Waziri-Naziri tribe grow their hair long. Don't cut their hair like a Nazir, okay? The smallest tribe of the Pashtun are the Jadun or Gadun. The smallest tribe of Israel was Gad. Now, do you know how many Pashtu there are in the world today? 23 million. 23 million Pashtu. Now, we said before, there are about 13, 14 million Jews. We had a Holocaust where we lost 6 million of the Jews. Imagine that the Holocaust had not occurred. How many Jews would there be in the world today? Jews, upwards of 20 odd million, probably. 20 odd million Jews, 20 odd million Pashtu, the tribes of Reuven, Shimon, Gad, and Asher, and 500,000 of all the other 5 tribes that we've found. Maybe we are ready for the 2 sticks of Ephraim and of Yehuda to come together back in our prophecy of Yechezkel over here. The stick of Ephraim and the stick of Judah shall become one. We may be. Have we found them? I can't tell you. This is only a theory, but it's very possible that we've actually found the 10 lost tribes. Persuading 23 million Pashtun to come to Israel might be a little bit tricky. But let me tell you something, it won't be anywhere near as tricky as getting the Israeli chief rabbinate to accept 23 million Pashtun as the tribe, the 5 lost tribes. I'm going to stop there. I've gone well over my time, but I guess the beauty of Zoom is if you don't want to stay, you can just sidle off and nobody knows, so that's fine. Before I open up for questions, I just want to give over to Danny Limor for a few minutes, just for him for 5-10 minutes to give you a little taster of what he's been up to. Marcel, I'll come to you in the questions once Danny's spoken, to give you a little bit of a taster of what Danny's been up to recently with what he calls Judaizing communities across the globe. And as I said at the beginning, hopefully we'll have a full lecture from Danny in a couple of weeks, but I couldn't miss this opportunity to have we've got Danny with us just to give you a little bit of a taster. So Danny, if you could unmute yourself, please, and give us your a little introduction.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. So good evening, good night. I want to say, first of all, Johnny, that it will be difficult to speak after you about these 10 lost tribes. Although I thought that I was someone who knew quite a lot, but I learned a few things tonight. I just want to say about the Pashtun, some people call them the Pathans, and the part of them are in Pakistan, not only in Afghanistan, but you know that they have now, they are trying to get in touch with us, some of them, and they are willing to return, if you can call it, to Judaism. But that I will speak about it in another occasion, about the tribe of Gad. Just to give you a taste, you know, in Nigeria, where I've been many times, more than 10 years going there, and some of our friends at our shul know about it because they even contributed tefillin and talitot that I took to Nigeria. In Nigeria, you have a tribe whose name is Igbo. You write it I-G-B-O. You don't pronounce the G. It comes to Igbo, which is, according to them, the origin of the word Igbo is Hebrew. Hebrew became Igbo. Now, we spoke about the different names that we had in the past. We were called Israelites, we were called Jews, but we were also called Hebrews. First of all, we were Hebrews. When Jacob went down to Egypt, it was the Hebrews. And then, after Ma'amad al-Sinai, after we got the Torah, we started to be called the Israelites. Anyway, so these people, they believe, and this is a very large tribe, up to actually the second largest tribe in Nigeria, about 35 million persons. You'll have to change the accounting of the Jewish people in comparison, the two sticks that you mentioned. We'll have to look for more Jews because actually we have more Israelites than Jews. But anyway, this a huge tribe, they are all Christians. And I tell their story next time. I just wanted to give you this teaser, which means they call themselves descendants of the tribe of God. And there is a kingdom, there is a dynasty of kings in Western Africa, in the area of Nigeria, that the dynasty is called the Gad Eri. If you look at the different names of the children of Jacob and their children, God had a son who was called Eri, E-R-I. And these people, this kingdom, this dynasty is called the Gad Eri dynasty. And they have a story that Eri, the grandson of Jacob, brought part of the tribe of Gad through Africa into what is today Nigeria. And you have already now in Nigeria 72 active synagogues. These people are not playing around. They are living a totally Jewish Orthodox, rabbinical life without having converted. None of them went through a giyur. They don't have rabbis. Their rabbi is the Rav Rashi is Rabbi Google. They ask their questions into Jewish sites at Google, and this is how they learn. They have Parashat HaShavua, they learn Mishnah, they learn Gemara, but I don't want to go into the subject. Next time we meet, I'll tell you about these people. I'll tell you about the descendants of the Anusim, the converted by force in Spain and Portugal, and what happened to their descendants in Latin America from Mexico down to Chile. And also a large group of people, mainly evangelists that are coming to Judaism by a process of faith according to the Old Testament, which is our Bible. And well, I don't want to enter into this because then it will develop into a large presentation. We'll do it next time.
Okay, great, thank you, Danny. I will go to questions in a sec, but I will just to let you know, I will ask Avril to make one of her lovely flyers, and it will be sent out to all the places we sent this one to. Feel free to pass it on to anybody else. It'll probably be, I'll arrange with Danny a time, but probably be in a couple of weeks' time, and probably on a Sunday evening, because that's when we tend to do our little thing for the week. So we'll look forward to that. It's a fascinating story. As I said before, I'm in the middle of translating Danny's report to the Ministry of the Diaspora, in all its detail, and it's absolutely amazing. So we'll look forward to hearing the full story of that in a couple of weeks' time. What I would like to do now is to open it up to questions. Might be a little bit difficult. I don't want people shouting out because there's too many of us. There's still 65 here. There is and of course I can't see 65 people on the screen, but there is a raise hand icon. And if you press the raise hand icon, I will be able to see that you have your hand up. So Marcel Glasky was first up. So Marcel, what's you'd like to say? And then Michael Kraus will be next.
Yes, Stanley, it was very, very good. You didn't mention the river Sambatia, the river that stops on Shabbat, where the Shvatim are on the other side of the river.
And where is that?
I don't know.
Okay, well there's a bit of homework for me then. Okay.
You didn't even mention it.
Well, that's because I've never heard of it. So I'll have to do some more research. Trust you to ask me a question I can't answer. Right, Michael Kraus, see if you can ask me one that I can answer.
Right, two things. With regards to these 10 tribes, has anybody tried any DNA testing on them to see whether or not there's some ancestry there? And the other thing is, with Simeon, that tribe was in the middle of Judah. Why wasn't it part of the 2 tribes? How comes it was part of the 10 tribes?
Shimon it was an interesting tribe because Shimon split, and some of Shimon stuck in the south and some of Shimon went up in the north. As far as the DNA is concerned, there has been a tremendous amount of work done on DNA. Not specifically with all of the tribes, obviously, but in some of the tribes there have been DNA work done. There's been DNA work done with the tribe of Levi as well, with the Kohanim, and maybe I'll do a presentation on that in a few weeks' time as well, because there's a lot of work being done over the years, and some more recent work done on DNA. Some of it actually is not been publicized because it doesn't actually fit with what our theories are. Most people only publish research if it fits with what they're trying to prove. But nevertheless, we'll go through it and we'll see what we can make of it in a few weeks' time. So yes, the answer is there has been research done, but it doesn't always come up with the answers we want. Any other questions?
Johnny?
Yes, who's that?
Jonathan.
Okay, Jonathan, go ahead.
It's very amazing, but who did the research? Because it was fabulous. Who did the research?
Who did the research on for all that I just told you all about?
Yeah.
Largely I got it from my son. I did a bit. He did most of it, and he did it a few years ago, and I updated it recently.
Quite amazing. Quite amazing.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Hazel, I can see you waving at me. Hello, Hazel, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
Yes, well, thank you.
Yes. How is your son that had his appendix out many years ago?
Oh, he's great, thank you very much, yes.
Okay. Well, I must say it was an absolutely fascinating by all means. And in my own imagination, I always thought that these 10 tribes dispersed exactly where you said. Although there are tribes around the world that say they are part of the lost tribes, like people in Wales who've got names like Isaac and Cohen and so on. Some of them there believe they're part of the 12 tribes. Indians believe that they're also part of the tribe that dispersed. Whether they are or whether they aren't is not all that important. What I'd like to ask you is, are there people like ourselves actually meeting these people? Or are they just there and we know about them? Do people converse with them? I mean, how do we get on with finding if they're the real people? Okay,
that's a very good question. And that will be answered in very, very great detail by Danny Lee Moore in a couple of weeks' time, because that is exactly what he has been doing. He has been he's been going around the world to Latin America, to Africa, to all these places, to India, and going to these places and meeting with these communities and finding out about them, helping them, encouraging them to be part, if not part of the Jewish people, at least to be supporters of Israel. And these people want to be part of the people of Israel. And the answer to your question, Hazel, is there are not enough people doing it. Danny will tell you in detail what he's been up to. He was given a task by the Ministry of Diaspora to report back to them. And I think that the plan that Danny will go into in detail, but the plan is that Israel should spend some resources, some time, some effort in encouraging these people to come back to be part of our people. If they are our lost brothers and sisters, then we have an obligation to bring them back. If they're not our lost brothers and sisters, at the very least, they're going to be our supporters and they're going to be friends of ours. So it's very, very important that what you're saying, Hazel, happens. And you'll hear in detail from Danny next time exactly what he's been doing and what others have been doing. But the plan is that this will take off. Whether the Israeli government will buy into it sufficiently, we will have to wait and see. But that is definitely the plan. Anybody else have any questions before we close up? I can see, I saw a hand up there. Who did I see? Howard Epstein.
Johnny, you probably are encouraged to know that Penina Tamano Shatar has become Minister for Immigration. She's Ethiopian born. There is talk of the B'nai Israel being welcomed from India. Have you heard about that?
There's talk of all sorts of things, but until it happens, until the chief rabbinate actually give them seals of approval for each of the tribes, whoever we're talking about, it's an uphill battle. I'm sure Danny will go into this as well. It's an uphill battle. Gior is a very thorny subject. Conversion is a very thorny subject. You can speak to the Russians who've come over here who've had a terribly tough time. Those of them that have wanted to convert. It's not a simple situation. It's very politicized. And there is talk, there's always talk, but there's always counter talk as well. And sadly, in my humble opinion, there is not enough goodwill coming from the chief rabbinate. In fact, there's a lot of ill will coming from the chief rabbinate in the subject of Gior. And we've got a long way to go before we fulfill the mitzvah of V'ahavta et hager, and you shall love the stranger, which is alluded to or mentioned explicitly 36 times in the Torah. And we as a people are not very good at it. And as a chief rabbinate in Israel, we are exceedingly bad at it. That is my humble opinion. So that, I think, probably answers that. Any other points? Any other questions? I can see somebody called Beryl and Stanley who would like to say something. You'll have to unmute yourself because I can't hear you. You can find your unmute button. There we go.
There we go. We went on Jewish India, a trip to Jewish India a year or so ago, and we saw many of the fantastic landmarks and communities that were there. I don't know if you've got this book.
No, I haven't seen that book. No, that looks very interesting.
Full of synagogues throughout India. You would get more information on this by those people that did India Kosher India.
Yeah, I actually booked on that trip a couple of years ago, and then I had to cancel for one reason or another, and I couldn't go on it. It's definitely on my bucket list to go to because there is so much history there, which I'm sure is full in that book. I'm assuming it was a great trip, was it?
We saw great, unbelievable trip. We saw cemeteries 200-300 years and 400 years old. The advent of Jews in India, Mumbai, Konkan, Kerala, Calcutta, Pune, Gujarat, and Delhi.
Okay,
This
so
is the
there's
various synagogues that were
maybe
there.
we'll get you to give a talk about Indian landmarks of India in a few weeks' time then.
No, my wife said no, but it was
Right,
a
well,
most fascinating trip.
It was worth a try. Okay,
Right.
good, excellent. Thank you for that.
And it was brilliant, a brilliant presentation.
Thank you very much.
I thank you very much. A most brilliant, fascinating presentation. I look forward to the next ones.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions before we close up? I can't see any more. Anyone else want to say anything? Speak up before I close the meeting now and stop recording. Okay, we've stopped recording.